Welcome back, folks, to the Holy Apple, the Holy Hilltop, to the Holy Land. Super Thursdays here. We are on the 27th day of Tishrei. We usually don't do classes in this month, but with the election fervor coming up, so with God's help, we will do it today. Welcome to the year 5781. Okay, the title of our class today, Trump or Biden? Who will make America great again? We see a very big difference in the Torah between Abraham's son Ishmael and Rebekah and Isaac's son Esav. We can understand why Ishmael would hate Isaac. If we look at his history in his family, we could understand that there is a different mother involved here. For Ishmael, his mother is Hagar, and of course Isaac's mother is a different mother, so that already sets up a problematic situation. Number two, Ishmael was chased away, was exiled from his own house. That can bring upon animosity. Number three was also, if we look in Genesis chapter 17, verse 19, we will see that he was also cut off. Ishmael was also cut off from his father's Abraham's inheritance. So those are three big strikeouts for Ishmael to understand his animosity towards Isaac. However, if you look at Esav, Jacob's brother, we really can't understand what is all this hatred about. We see they were born from the same father and mother. Number two, up until the age of 13, our sages tell us there was no difference between them. You could not differentiate between the two. Number three, of course, Esav was never chased away. Though he committed many, many transgressions, he was never chased away from his home. Actually, the only person that was running away was Jacob from his brother Esav. So how could it be? Why is there an edict in the Torah that it is law, it is known that Esav hates Jacob? This is brought down in the book, the Sifri, in the portion of Balotcha, chapter 69. We don't see, there is a law, there is a similar verse in our sages that Ishmael hates Isaac, but that was more of a personal contention. It was more of a family squabble. Not the case when we're talking about Esav hating Jacob. We're talking about an historical axiom. Why is that? To understand this difference, we have to understand that the battle, the fight, the hatred that Esav has for Jacob, it has nothing to do with ideology, philosophy, nothing to do with it. This hatred is from conception. This hatred is intrinsic in the DNA of Esav, who of course passes it down to the nation of Edom, Rome, Christian world. No problem. No, it's not a battle about we have a different philosophy, we have a different ideology. No. This is something that's ingrained from the womb. To understand this clearly, we have to go back to Rebekah's pregnancy. During Rebekah's pregnancy, there is an axiom here for all of history. We all know that the Torah teaches us that Rebekah was having all these pains when she would go by houses of learning Torah of those days before the giving of the Torah. Then there was kicking, and when she would pass houses of idol worshiping, there would also be some unrest in her stomach, in her womb. As it says in Genesis 25:22, "Vayitorotzitzu abanim," the children agitated within Rebekah. They're not even born. They're in the womb of their mother, and there's an agitation going on. Our sages tell us, at the end I'll give the sources where all this is coming from. The two children were fighting over the inheritance of this world and also next world, before they were even born. Number 3, Esav tried to kill Jacob. We're talking about, once again, we're not talking about when he was already 63 years old. We're not talking about that. We're talking about, when they're in the womb. Esav is trying to kill Jacob, and Jacob is trying to kill Esav. Both hate each other. Both hate each other. These sources are the following: Breshit Rabbah 63:6, Yalkut Shimoni 110 in the portion of Toldot, the Midrash Tehillim in the 9th chapter, paragraph 6. Rebekah goes on, when all this is happening, this agitation which is happening within her, she goes and seeks out advice, counseling, coaching. Our sages tell us 3 different opinions. Which coach, which consultant did she contact? One opinion is Abraham. That is brought down by the Chizkuni and also by the Ibn Ezra. Another opinion is that it was either Shem, the son of Noah, or an angel. This is brought down in Breshit Rabbah 63:7. We have then this axiom that's brought down by Rashi. Rashi did not, it's not an original idea. Of course, it was brought down, as we will see, from a verse in the prophets, brought down also in the Talmud. But let's start from the beginning. Rashi. It says in the verse, when Rebekah was feeling the experiencing this agitation, it says that there are 2 nations within you. 2 nations. And from your innards, from the inside, from your loins, they are separated. Not, once again, not from the time of birth. This is from the time of conception. One kingdom, Rashi writes, one kingdom will be stronger than the other kingdom. On this verse, one of the commentators on Rashi, even though he was a commentator himself, there are over 500 commentaries on Rashi, so don't get sweat up. So the Siftei Chachamim, which is one of the commentators on, in most Chumashim you could find it, says an amazing idea. Don't we know, didn't the Talmud tell us that there is a concept in life that the evil inclination is brought into a person when the child is born and not before that. So what is going down here with the story of Rebecca? It's supposed, the evil inclination is supposed to be coming only after a person is born. However, it says here, the Siftei Chachamim says, no here, this is an exception to the rule. When we see Esav running and kicking and freaking out to try to sin, and when his mother would pass houses of idol worshiping, he would freak out and start kicking and going crazy in order to do sin. This is teaching us a lesson that from conception, Esav had this evil side in him, and he was looking to find the birds of the same feathers travel together. So he was looking to get together when he would sense that they were passing houses of idol worshiping, of foreign worship. He felt a connection. He identified with that. This is an exception to the rule here. This is from the beginning. The Maharal in Netzach Yisrael, in his book Netzach Yisrael, chapter 15, and I summarize what he writes. There are babies that are born with natural tendencies, inborn qualities. These qualities that are ingrained have nothing to do with the evil inclination which comes to a person only after birth. These intrinsic qualities were present by Jacob, holiness, and Esav, impurities, already in their mother's womb. Now, we said Rashi was basing his ideas, it's not original, basing it on a verse in the prophets. Let's look at it right now. In the book of Ezekiel, chapter 26, verse 2, I will translate into English. Because the city of Tyre, Tyre, has said about Jerusalem, hooray, the gateway of the nations, Jerusalem, has been broken. When it was destroyed, the temple, it is turned towards me. Now I am on top of the horse, so to speak. Now I rule. I will be filled, for Jerusalem was destroyed. The key to understanding this lesson of the elections, 2020 elections, to understand this fundamental Jewish concept of life, it's very important to concentrate on two words in this verse of the prophet Ezekiel. The first word is, I will become filled or fulfilled. And the second word is destruction. So we have on the scale one filled, wholesome, and the other destruction. That's how it goes. Those are the two key words. One nation, in this case, the nation of Tyre in Lebanon, was filled or fulfilled, whole. And Jerusalem was destroyed. That's how the scale goes. It's either the nation of Esav, of Rome, of the Christian world on top and the Jews on the bottom, or it's the Jews on the top and Esav on the bottom. Where do we see this? We have in the book Tanchuma, in the portion of Bo, in the 4th paragraph, it says a principle. Every time that it says in the Tanakh, it uses the word tzor without the letter vav. Without the letter vav. If you look at what we just read in Ezekiel, you see that there is no vav. What does that mean? So there is a principle here. Every time you see the word tyre, T-Y-R-E, tzor, without a vav, we are talking about who? We are talking about the descendants of Esav. We are talking about Edom. We are talking about Rome. We are talking about the Christian world. And when it says the word Tyre, tzor, with a vav, we're talking about the actual country in Lebanon. Now the Talmud, in Tractate Megillah, page 6, side A, tells us this amazing lesson that Rashi was kind enough to present to us. And here's the source. After, of course, the source is the verse in the prophet, but now we go to the Talmud. Caesarea and Jerusalem, if someone will come and inform you that they both have been destroyed, do not believe it. If some messenger, if some person comes and informs you that both Jerusalem and Caesarea, which of course is Rome, it was a Roman city, both of them have been built up, both of them are great again, don't believe that either. So they could never be on an equal plateau. However, if someone comes and tells you that Caesarea has been destroyed and Jerusalem is great again, or someone will tell you that Jerusalem is in ruins and Caesarea is once again great again, that you could believe. And then the Talmud brings the verse, brought that we said the two words, the first word being filled up, satiated, and the second word is destruction. And Rav Nachman learns this concept, this scale, the tipping of the scales. There is no equal plateau for these two nations, the nations of Israel and the nations of Esav, Edom, Rome, the Christian world. There is no equality. According to Rav Nachman, the son of Yitzchak, he says that this concept is from not the prophet Ezekiel, it's from what we read in the book of Genesis, that one nation will stand over the second nation. That is the prophecy that Rebekah was told when she went to either the angel or to Shem, the son of Noah, or to Abraham. This was the privy information. If you understand this, you understand everything. If you don't understand this scale, one nation up, the other down, one great again and one destroyed, then you understand nothing. Where do we see this axiom in action? Okay, so we will see a numerous amount of sources where we see this taking place. We see it put into action, put into play. Number one, our source, the Psikta, in Toldot, chapter 23. Listen closely. As long as Israel is great, Esav is in a state of servitude. As it says in the prophet Shmuel Bet, chapter 8, verse 14. Edom are slaves to David. However, as long as Esav is great, is on the high pedestal, then the Jewish people are subservient to the nations, to Esav, to Rome, to the Christian world, as it is written in the scrolls, Eicha, chapter 1, verse 5. I have placed your enemies on top. That's number one. There's our scale. Number two, in the Haggadah of Passover by Rabbi Soloveitchik on page 52, he says an amazing point that he brings out. If we open up our Haggadot, check it out, we see that the Haggadah connects two historical events. One is that God says, I have given Esav the area of Seir to rule, and then right away the Haggadah says, and Jacob went down to Mitzrayim. This is the law. This is Murphy's law, so to speak. When Esav was great, was given the lands of Seir to rule, then of course Jacob is going down to Egypt. And we're not talking about chronological events. We're talking about a principle here. That's why the author of the Haggadah, which we'll not get into right now, that's a whole story in itself, but the author of the Haggadah saw fit to connect these two events, though they are not chronologically connected, but they are ideologically connected, that when Esav is ruling, the Jewish people are in dire straits, are in Egypt. Number three, if we look at the end of the portion, the last 20 or so verses in the portion of Vayishlach, we see all the officials, all the VIPs of Esav, of Edom, and how powerful they were. And then exactly after that portion of Vayishlach concludes, we have right away the portion of Vayeshev Yaakov. We're talking about the descendants of Jacob, all the 12 tribes. So, the book Tirachem Tzion, page 59, he says, look at this connection. On the end of the portion of Vayishlach, we have the greatness, great again, the pedestal of Esav Edom, that nation, and then right away we have the plateau of the Jewish people, and Jacob and his kids and his descendants. And that's the way the ball bounces. That's the way the world was set up. This is a rule of nature. Number 4, when we between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, or on the days, depending if you're Ashkenazi, then 4 days or so before Rosh Hashanah, we say a certain prayer. They're called slichot, where we're asking forgiveness from God. And there's one paragraph that is really unusual. There are 6 verses. There are 6 verses that are brought down in the slicha that's called Zechor Rachamecha, Hashem V'chasadecha. Check it out. 6 verses from the Torah that are brought down that Hashem, we are pleading for God to forgive us and to have mercy on us. We are bringing various verses that are speaking about positive reasons for God to have mercy on us. But then all of a sudden, out of the blue, out of context, there is one verse, the 7th verse. And it says, God, remember the nation of Edom. Remember them, because they have destroyed the temple. What in the world is going on here? You just gave me 6 verses only about the people of Israel. And positive. And now you give something negative about a nation. Rome, the nation of Edom, Christian nation, destroying the temple. Destroying the temple. What is the connection for God to be merciful? Folks, it is brought down by the Avodat Levav on page 81 in his book. He points out an amazing point here. We see that there is an axiom here. There is a principle. The principle is the following, that if we remind God what the nation of Edom has done to us, and Hashem will revenge and destroy them, automatically the Jewish people will be lifted up to the pedestal of the world, because we said that's how the ball bounces, that's how the world works. This is a law of nature. It cannot be changed. The one going up and the other going down. So we remind God what happened to us at the hands of Edom destroying the temple, hoping and pleading and praying that they will be destroyed. And once they will be destroyed, automatically the Jewish people will be brought up on their heels. Number 5. In the portion of Kitisa, Deuteronomy, we see right before the verses that talk about the commandment to destroy Amalek, we see that the Torah discusses that a person, a merchant, has to be honest in his occupation when it comes to weighing the produce, whatever a person is selling. So the sages ask, what in the world is the connection between being honest when it comes to weights, and make sure, because there's all kinds of games you could play that will give you an advantage, a merchant advantage over the person that's coming to buy something. You could do all kinds of tricks, making things heavier in your favor, so to tip the scales in your favor. So you have to make sure that it's 100%, that your scales are exact. So what's the connection between the destruction of Amalek? So it is brought down in the book Tachel Shana on page 15 by Rabbi David Avraham. He writes an amazing thing. It's the scale of that Rebecca was given by the prophet, what is happening in her womb. This secret of history, of life, this true axiom that when one, Esav, is up, Jacob is down. When Jacob is up, Esav is down. God wanted to give over this message to us. And that's why right before we talk about Amalek, which is a descendant of Edom, which is a descendant of Esav, we see the discussion about scales, because this is the axiom of history. When Esav is up on the scale, the Jewish people are down. When the Jewish nation is up, the nation of Esav is down. 6. We have a verse in Psalms 75:11, and it says, when the horns of the wicked are smashed, then the horns of the righteous will be exalted. This connection to the Talmud, this connection which the Talmud pointed out, this historical fact of nature, when one nation is up, the other one is down. This was brought down in the book Torat Ish on page 164. He connects very correctly these two verses, one speaking about the destruction of the horns of the wicked, and then without even saying it, we understand and realize that the horn and the pride and strength of the righteous will then arise, because that's the way the world turns. 7th, a verse in the Prophet Malachi, chapter 1, verses 2 and 3. It says that the Prophet Malachi was the last prophet before the end of prophecy. It says, God says, I love you, the Jewish people. And then it says, Esav, the brother of Jacob, I hate. So, it's very simple. If God loves Jacob, then Jacob is up on the pedestal. And we understand that Esav is hated. And the opposite. If Esav is up on the top, then we understand that Jacob is on the bottom. A verse straight out of the prophets. Now, after 36 years, Jacob gets together again. Jacob gets together again with his brother Esav. And there's a very interesting exchange. And remember this all your lives. Very important. Fundamental. Esav turns to Jacob after he presents him with the gifts. And he bows down. And Esav says, Jacob, let us go together, equal. And then this is in Vayishlach, Genesis 33:12. And then 2 verses later in 14. Jacob says, you know what? No. We're not going together. You progress, go forward, and, in the end of days, we'll meet up together when you will be judged and punished. Rashi says on this verse, what was the mindset of Esav when he says, let us go together? Rashi says, B'shaveh lecha, I am equal to you, Jacob. Jacob says, no way, Ray. There's no such thing. There is no axiom. There is no law of nature that speaks about equality. It's either up or down. Down or up. Jacob realizes it and sends him walking. But more so, our sages point out and say, don't think that it was just a refusal of Jacob to be equal. It's more than that. Our sages tell us in Midrash Rabbah, Dvarim Rabbah 1 17. Chapter 1, paragraph 17. Shmuel, the son of Nachman, says, when Esau was together with Jacob in this reunion, Esau says, my brother, let us go together in this world as one. And Jacob refused. So very clear, okay, what was in Esau's mindset and what was in Jacob's. Jacob understood this. No way. But even our sages tell us in Breshit Rabbah 78:18, Jacob even refused an escort of a few steps. Why? Because Jacob understood that if a wicked person escorts you, then what you have done, because you have allowed him to do this escort, just like Abraham, his grandfather, when Abraham was escorted 4 steps by Pharaoh, that God gave him the quote-unquote merit to enslave the Jewish people. Okay? Why? Because when you allow the nations to perform these commandments, you are actually bringing them above us for their good deed. And therefore, according to our principle, if you brought them above you, then now you are substitute to them. So therefore, Jacob understood and he refused. This could be checked out in Sota 46b. Even a small escort he turned down. The Tur on the Torah, in this verse that we just quoted about the offer by Esau to escort his brother, and our sages tell us that he refused even a few steps to escort. Listen to the words, the eternal words of the Torah. This is Genesis 33:15. Why did the Torah tell us about the refusal of Jacob? Why is that an important lesson? And then the Torah says, this is to tell us for generations. Generation, that's us. That's me. That's you. That's all of us. To stay away. Keep our distance from them as much as possible. Keep your distance. Folks, do we begin to understand what's going on here? Can you imagine that? Who will make America great again? Making America great again is taking the Jewish nation, the Jewish people, and throwing us under the train tracks. That is what we're talking about here. And we have Jews that are running around, either forbidden or, I don't know, maybe we should say forbidden, little pun there, or for Trump. Yeah, let's make America great. Making America great is shooting ourselves in our own leg, is bringing us down. And it ain't going to happen, as we will further discuss. Going on with this law of nature, of our scales, up and down. Another example, let's look at the number 13. If you want to really see this scale, top and bottom and top, Let's look at the number 13. I read. Researchers estimate that at least 10% of the U.S. population has a fear of the number 13. And each year, even more specific, they have a fear of Friday the 13th. Now, this word, baby, this is like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Whoa! How do we say that?
I believe it is triskaidekaphobia.
Shh. Listen, I want to hear everybody. Standing ovation for Brother Tzvi, our faithful camelman there. Standing ovation, give it to him. I was saying, God, how am I going to get out of this word? How can I express this word? I don't know. It has like, I'm not kidding you, it has like 20-some letters in it. As Tzvi said, results in financial losses in excess of $800 million. Friday the 13th. As people avoid getting married, traveling, or in the most severe cases, even working. But what's so unlucky about the number 13? An early myth surrounding the origin of fear involved one of the world's oldest legal documents, the Code of Hammurabi, which reportedly omitted a 13th law from its list of legal rules. They had omitted the 13th. Mathematicians, scientists, meanwhile, point to the number 12, often considered the perfect number in the ancient world. The ancient Sumerians developed numeral systems based on the use of 12 that is still used for measuring time today. Most calendars have 12 months. A single day is comprised of 12 hours. Following so closely on the heels of a perfect number, some argue poor 13 was sure to be found lacking and unusual. Now they bring another proof. What's the problem with the number 13? Why are the nations afraid of the number 13? This revolves around the appearance of a 13th guest at two ancient events. In the Bible, Judas Iscariot, the 13th guest to arrive at the Last Supper, is the person who betrays Jesus. Meanwhile, ancient Norse lore holds that evil and turmoil were first introduced in the world by the appearance of a treacherous and mischievous god Loki at a dinner party in Valhalla. He was, of course, the 13th guest, upsetting the balance of 12 gods who were already in attendance. According to the Stress Management Center, I guess they study about stress, and Phobia Institute in North Carolina, more than 80% of high-rise buildings in the United States of America, you heard it right, 80% of the high-rises do not have a 13th floor. The vast majority of hotels, hospitals, airports avoid using the number 13. Also departing gates as well. You will notice next time, if the airports ever open up again, check it out at your nearest airport if they ever open up. For gate number 13. Folks, that is the nations. Okay, 13 for them, that is the pits. You know, that is you're the cellar dweller. That is the sewer rats. And in the Torah, in Judaism, the top of the tops. Amazing, the top of the tops. We have, when we look at all the great things of the number 13, we have, for example, there are the 13 principles, attributes of mercy of God. We know that when a male is the age of 13, he now has the good inclination that arrived The good inclination arrives. At the age of 13, a person, it's a day of rejoicing, day of responsibility. There's nothing happier than that. We know every morning in our prayers, there are 13, God gave us on Mount Sinai, 13 tools in order to receive laws out from the written law. We have 13 tools to derive from them laws of the everyday living. So these are 13. The Maimonides, of course, has his 13 principles of faith. We know the number 13. If you look at the word Echad, God is one. If you count up the numerical value of Echad, you know it, baby. It comes to the number 13. Aleph is 1, Chet is 8, that's 9, and 4 is 13. So for us, 13 is God, represents God. So that's an amazing side, no extra charge for that. Okay, last but not least, and then we'll call it our first class. We'll call it a time out. There's a lot more of this balance or imbalance in the world, but I just wanted to finish. There's an obvious question here which should be bothering us. We believe that this axiom is true. It was given over to Rebecca by a prophet. And we see in the Talmud that this is a general law of nature, of history. One nation, either the Jews or Esav, the Christian world, up, and the Jews down, or the opposite. So we believe that. How in the world then was it possible that Isaac was about to bless Esav? When Isaac feared that he was about to die, he goes and he tells Esav to go out to the fields and to prepare a meal for a blessing. If you ever notice, any Jewish event, especially in the last 10-15 years, there's always food involved. You know, there's all them Jews, they're always looking for, well, they didn't get it, it's not original. They took it from Isaac when he wanted to bless or give over important message to Esav. First, we have to have the bagels and lox first. Got to get the bagels and lox. So how is it possible that if this axiom exists, and it does, if Isaac was going to bless Esav, that would mean that Jacob would be cursed. He would be on the bottom of the totem pole. How could we do that? So, a few books take on this question. Number 1, this is the book Dole Umashke, page 65, and then also page 569. 2 places. Okay, here's what he says. Number 1, the war between Esav and Jacob already began in the womb. No compromises in this battle. One wins, the other loses. No time for losers, for we are the champions of the world. Okay, all rights reversed. All right, reserved to Queen Freddie Mercury. No time for losers, because we are the champions of the world. Okay, so Isaac never, the existence of one must eliminate the existence of the other. Number 4, Isaac never intended to bless Esav with spiritual blessings, just material blessings. Now, in this second, I said there are 2 sources within the book of Doleo Mashke. The second source, there's still a problem here. Okay, I got it. Jacob was to receive the spiritual. He would be spiritually. But baby, you know, it says in the ethics of our fathers, Imen Kemach Ein Torah. If there's no economy, if there's no blessing, if there's no food, if there's no money, then there is no Torah. You have to have some kind of economic base, blessing. So there's still something missing here. And then he fills it in. Isaac did not understand the severity of Esau's hatred to Jacob. If he would have understood this, he would never have even given him a physical blessing. Once again, we're missing data. We're missing important information. We know that Rebekah never told Isaac about the prophecy and she did not want to upset her husband Isaac that she has a child who she thought it was just one child who also goes to synagogue and goes to church, so to speak, at the same time. She never told him that. So he was clueless about this. Because if Isaac would have understood the severity of the hatred, he would have understood that even the physical blessing that he wanted to originally give was a mistake. Because if all physicality was in the hands of Esau, Jacob would be strangled and not be able to survive. So therefore, it had to go into the hands, the blessing, the physical blessing also had to go into the hands of the Jewish people. In the end, says the book, Doleu Mashke, in the end, of course, Isaac agreed with his wife, Rebekah. You know, they always say, your wife is right. So I guess they got it from here. In another book, Tzela Kesef, on page 139, it says that Isaac did not know that Jacob bought the firstborn status. And also Isaac did not know the words of the prophet to Rebekah regarding the axiom, when one is up, the other is down. When Isaac was thinking about giving a physical blessing to Esau, he was not aware that also in the physical world, in the economical world, this also exists. One up, one down. Okay, so for today, we'll call it a timeout. Make sure to continue. Very important class also on the 2020 elections.